Okay, July 22nd, 5 o'clock, the BEDC is called to order. We reserve the right to convene into executive session. So that's what we will be doing immediately. So executive session 3.1, the Bastrop EDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. 1, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, Ramey Agreement. 2, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, Section 551.072, deliberation about the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property, and Section 551.087, deliberation regarding the commercial or financial information received on potential projects, Project Paint by Numbers, and 921 Main Street project. 3, Section 551.074, personnel matters, to deliberate the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of an employee. And 3.2, we will need to wait on, so we'll, yes? Sure. Absolutely. So is, who does that? Do I do that from here, or do y'all do it from there? At this time, let's do a roll call. Pat Crawford, Sam Keir, Kevin Pluckett, Ron Spencer,
here,
Jay, Jeff, Hadinya, and Connie Schrader, Catherine Nash, here. Okay, we have a quorum. Thank you. It's 6:07, and the BEDC board reconvenes into session. Going on to 4.2. Any public comments tonight? I see that Mr. Smarzak will be speaking under 4.2, so we'll wait until we come to that. Thank you. Okay, so if we could, we're going to go ahead and go to regular business and presentations. 4.1, consideration, discussion, and possible action on Resolution R 2019-0017 of the Board of Directors of the BEDC entering into a professional services agreement for project management services on the 921 Main Street project. So for consideration, the 921 project is quite a large project, and I'm going to let Jean go into the discussion of how we're going to approach with a project manager before we open it up for more discussion.
We did open up some communication with... Sorry about that. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. So we did open up some communication with multiple project managers and received some potential bids back from them regarding, kind of the scope of work of what we were looking at to help us manage that project from a day-to-day basis and evaluate that project from an EDC perspective. And so through that process, we received bids back ranging from price of just around $35,000 all the way up to $200,000. And last board meeting, you all gave some direction to look at ones within the $40,000 range. And so we have selected a company, and it is Mr. Crouch, and he will be providing those services for us and keeping us moving forward on task, on time, and on budget.
Okay, well, I can say that I'm really, really pleased that we decided to have a project manager. Currently going under some change orders at my own home. I was really hesitant about change orders on a building 921 Main. So I'd like to hear from some of the other board members as to how excited they are about having a project manager work this project.
Okay, I will add to that. It's a wonderful thing that we're able to get somebody with a good background that we've worked with in the past that can help us oversee this, because clearly it's a good-sized project, and we do need somebody that can help shepherd this along, and so I'm very pleased with it myself.
So a couple of questions, because this resolution is fairly generic, Mr. Attorney, and I believe that the intent of the verbiage is that we are hiring a project manager to look after the public's funds that will be expended on this building, and that it's their scope of services, their goal is to bring the building on time, under budget, and but as far as signature authority for change orders, there will be things that have to come back to this board, and that you will cover that, because the contract was not in the packet. But what we're agreeing to is, in principle, hiring a construction manager. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the other thing I think it's worth mentioning, because we really appreciate the fact, Jean, thank you for sending to the board the folks that have turned in their information so that we could review the proposals that were sent in. And one of the biggest differences is that the other proposals were far away, so they had to cover their travel time and their travel expenses and all that kind of stuff. So having a local person not only made it more cost effective, but I believe we will benefit from them being available on short notice. I personally want to make sure that what is included in the contract, and I believe it was done when you put the scope of work out for people to bid, is that this building is supposed to be built by June of next year.
Yes,
so I think I personally am looking for a monthly update of, we are on track, we are not, and they don't have to do a 30-minute presentation, but I think the board would like to know on a month-to-month basis, how are we doing? Are there any pending change orders? Are there any decisions that are made from the board? Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's the right way to do it, yes.
And yes, that was addressed in the very beginning from the very start. That was qualified in the request that they be available every single one of our board meetings from the time that the firm is hired to the time that the project is complete, to provide a monthly update, as well as any special meetings that are specific to that project.
2921.
Yes.
Okay.
And legally speaking, I'll make sure that that's expressed in the contract too.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, is there any other discussion on the project manager? At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the resolution number 2019-0017, entering into a professional service agreement for project management services on 921 Main Street.
I second.
All those approve?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. 4.2, consideration, discussion, and possible action on resolution R 2019-0018 of the Board of Directors of the BEDC approving the terms of a lease agreement. So we're going to turn once again to Jean, who's going to walk us through the terms of a lease agreement, and then we'll hear from Mr. Smarzak.
Sorry about that. Turned it back off, trying not to interrupt. What we're looking at tonight is terms for a potential tenant that would evaluate this project for a 10-year lease term, as well as providing a $19 first 5-year, as well as a $20 second or the second portion of that, 6 through 10. And a $2 triple net fee on top of that. This would put the Bastrop EDC in a great position to pay off and come to terms with our loan on that building in a much quicker time frame. So we really feel like those terms would be extremely beneficial, especially with it being a 10-year term and having that full commitment.
And the $19 a square foot, it sounds very favorable. What is the current rental square footage in downtown?
Oh, goodness. Depending on the type of building that it is, it ranges anywhere from, I believe, $12 up to $22. So the more up-to-date, completely refinished buildings are running around the $22 range. And the older buildings that may have that character and more rustic feel to them are the ones that are in the $12 to $15 range.
So let's open it up for a board discussion. I know that you've worked very hard on this for quite some time, and it's certainly been something that the public has weighed in on. I think these are very favorable terms that the public would agree. I
was going to add one more thing, that within that $19 term rate, that would also include the $35 finish out for the tenant finish out for the first tenant.
Okay, great.
All right, so that will definitely cover the servicing of the loan then, the $19 per square foot, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go ahead and
I'd like to make one comment for clarity with the attorney. This is a potential lease, and should someone agree to these lease terms, then we would have a lease. But with us approving this lease tonight, if it's approved, however it's voted on, but what we're considering tonight is just terms of a lease for that address.
Correct. The material terms for a lease at that address, correct.
Okay.
Okay, so without any further discussion, I'd like to entertain a motion. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, Richard, I'm so sorry. Mr. Smarzak, please come forward.
Good evening, Richard Smarzak, 925 Main Street. So I realize that the information provided in the packet is a recommendation from Stonecliff Hall, and it's subject to change. But just doing the simple math, first 5-year term at 19 a square foot, and assuming about 9,000 square feet to be leased, that's $855,000 to be realized. Second set of 5 years at 20 at 9,000 is $900,000. Total would be $1.755 million. That far exceeds the loan amount. The loan amount was only $1.42, so you get your payback. On top of that, BEDC lent money for the down payment. $335,000 goes back to the down payment. On top of that, it's a triple net, and there's tax revenue. This still continues to be a win. Thank you.
So I will entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve Resolution R 2019-0018, approving the terms of the lease agreement.
I second.
And those that approve?
Aye.
Any opposed? And it passes. So now is the fun part, getting into the hard work of identifying how to allocate the funds that we receive from sales tax. That's where we get our money. We get a half a cent of sales tax, and we then reinvest in the community to make economic improvements, bring vitality. But we also have to spend money in order to make money. And so that's where the budget comes in. And we want to be fiscally responsible, and we want to work with our partners within the city to provide those necessary funds that we can all gain from the economic benefits of our work. So at this time, we're going to have a couple of presentations
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Angela, don't we usually do this in May? We are getting a rather late start. With Mike's departure, we've received the numbers, I want to say it was June the 7th. We met with Sam Kerr.
June 7th?
June 7th. We met with the treasurer as a group. The whole staff met with him. And he did not like the layout. He wanted to see a year-by-year comparison. We also identified that some of the numbers weren't quite accurate, so we had to go back. And then when I went to go back to the formulas that were provided, they didn't work, so I ended up indeed going back to Mr. Kirkpatrick's form of doing it because I was familiar with that. So it did take it took about a month to do that. Typically, you're right, it's about a 3-month process. Well, I'm sure it had to be quite a task. Sam was available at all hours of the day and night. I really appreciate him. And the rest of the staff for helping me out too. Well, I appreciate your hard work. I know this is difficult.
Okay, so we're going to turn it over to you, Rebecca.
All right, thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Rebecca Gleason, and I am with the City of Bastrop Main Street program. I have been with the program since January, and I'm excited to be here to talk about the EDC's and Main Street's long partnership. Since our program's inception 12 years ago, the EDC has played a huge role in helping ensure our Main Street program is successful. The EDC has financially supported the Main Street program and the good works of our board.
I'm sorry for interrupting you, Rebecca. Angela, would you tell everybody, because folks that are trying to follow along, where is the $50,000? What part of it, so we can tell them what page in the book to be looking at? Sorry, Rebecca. It'll
You're
help
fine.
people.
Yeah.
My apologies. Okay, this falls under the category of city projects and services. And if you look down at the bottom, it's page 25. And that is the memo. City projects and programs is first. City of Bastrop shared services is below that. And then on the next page is the Main Street program support, which is what Rebecca is speaking on now.
And that rolls to what number in the budget?
One moment.
It's on page 18. Under City Project Services,
Yeah,
601.
okay. Page 25 didn't make, so in the packet, if we're on page 18,
It's the last one it's the second to last one listed, Main Street Program Support.
so it's 5596. So from just for board reference, it's been 50,000 since 2017. That's what we're proposing this year, and that's what's forecasted for next year.
That is correct.
Okay. Thanks, Rebecca. I was just trying to put it in
Absolutely.
perspective. Thank you.
Since the Bastrop Main Street program's inception, the BEDC has financially supported the good works of our program, leading to a strong, economically viable Main Street district, which is actually in the top 10 employers for Bastrop County in terms of employment numbers. If you look towards our mission, you will see that we work through our community partners and grassroots community involvement to be a stimulant for economic health, design, and promotion of the historical Main Street district, which directly aligns with y'all's mission of enhancing the quality of life in Bastrop by supporting economic development in our community. To the contract terms. So these contract terms have not changed from what I can see over at least the last 4 years, but what y'all's funds are directly supporting is business retention, marketing of the Main Street district, training and resources for our small business entrepreneurs, and helping to recruit new businesses into the Main Street district. Tonight I was asked to speak both on how we use the financial funds for fiscal year 2018 and 2019, including what projects we completed that fell under those contract terms, along with discussing what our board's plans are for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. To the first contract clause, which is business retention and expansion, we have been working hard the last 2 years to build out our downtown Bastrop brand which you may notice our logo there. Hopefully you've seen that around downtown. We have also implemented a new website, and our strongest marketing avenue continues to be our social media. We currently are up to just over 14,000 followers, and I went ahead and provided the last 28 days of data for you so you can really see the impact it's having. Over the last month, we've added 100 new followers, and each of our posts gather around 11,000 views. We also cohesively have a downtown Bastrop advertising campaign. Also within this last 2-year period, we had the Small Business Revolution that I know y'all were a big part of as well. The My Bastrop campaign was very successful. It reached over 3 million people in the United States and garnered 158 views on social media, with 54 media stories garnering 14.7 million impressions, which was huge for our small town. We have also hosted breakfast bites for our small business entrepreneurs, and Imagine the Possibilities tour for our brokers, and an EDC Main Street coffee chat with our local residents. We are currently gearing up for our second Lost Pines Christmas within this contract class season. We are excited to, in addition to all the fun and festivities that we have over that 6-week period, we are launching that hand in hand with a huge fourth quarter marketing campaign to help out the small businesses in our district and ensure that they finish the year strong. With the launch of our new committees, which I'll speak to briefly, we are going through a huge volunteer recruitment cycle right now that launched with the volunteer fair last week, and we will be having a Main Street reunion coming up for our volunteers to try to get them back in the fold. We also had a You've Got Mail small business marketing campaign that went very well. We had our campaign viewed by nearly 5,000 individuals who reside within 25 miles of the Bastrop epicenter. Also in this contract year, we became, thanks to the EDC, part of the Synchronous family. So what that is it's Main Street's first CRM and economic indicator database. This allows us to keep better track of economic data for our Main Street district and also make data-informed decisions. Late this summer, we will be rolling out a paid shop local campaign that will be geared towards each of the 4 quarters. And that will be a year-round paid campaign. This is not the graphic. This is just a placeholder because we want it to be a surprise. So we're pretty excited to be rolling that out. And again, that will be year-round. So depending on the season, we will be changing up the color schemes, and we will be able to place it on bags and have canvas tote giveaways for different seasons and things like that. We have also implemented the Downtown Bastrop Welcome Wagon, which is a great opportunity for myself and some of my board members to get out and get to know those new businesses. So we bring them a welcome kit that includes resources, contacts, and tips on how to leverage being part of the Main Street District, along with some beautifully branded balloons and some sweet treats that we make for them. In addition to everything else going on, we've had several hosted events this year that have been very successful and have been great for the community to get together. We've had our annual swirl, we had Summer in the City, which was a brand new event for us, and we had Table on Main. So we report our economic vitality statistics to the Texas Historical Commission, and we do that quarterly. And what the Texas Historical Commission is looking for is it's looking for the ratio between private and public investment. And so if you look for 2018, you'll see that for every $1 of public investment that we put into the Main Street District, we had $2 of private investment. And for 2019 thus far, we only have 2 quarters worth of data, but for every $1 of public money we've put into the district, we've had $2.48 worth of private investment. This is what I'm most excited to talk to y'all about this evening, because my board has worked really hard the last few months in conjunction with the Texas Downtown Association to really take our mission and build out a strategic plan that will help us achieve all of our goals based on data research and Main Street 4-point approach. We went through a massive data process. We had years and years of data to go off of that had been collected both by the city of Bastrop, the Main Street program, and also some of our community partners. So we did a deep dive into all of that data, and out of that came a brand new committee reconfiguration. What I'd really like to point y'all's attention to is that we broke out the Economic Vitality Committee into economic retention and economic expansion, which just means new businesses. I know it means a little bit different to y'all, but we really felt like those were important components of the Main Street program that really needed to be focused on separately, with one committee chaired by one of our board members focusing on retention and one focusing on getting new businesses downtown. So in specific, I went through to talk about over the next 2 years what projects we would be doing under each of these contract clauses. There's a lot of overlap, as you can imagine. So, you may see a project here that could be easily listed in another one of the contract terms. I also include it within y'all's packet, and you have a handout of exactly line item budget for how much money we spend on each of these projects. Because this was our first year doing line item budget like that, this is all based on analogous estimation. So as we get through into this 1 year, 2 year, 3 years out, we'll be able to get more and more detailed in our budget, as y'all can imagine. But to each of these contract terms, for BR&E, we are going to focus on business appreciation year-round. Again, Shop Local campaign that we're very excited about, building out cohesive business hours based on data. We're going to be setting up a Main Street roundtable by sector to ensure that each of our business sectors downtown are well represented. We are going to be focusing on the activation of markets through direct mail marketing and partnership. We have our Bastrop information guides downtown. We already do event-specific specials, but we'd like to take that to the next level with better branding, and of course our welcome wagon that I mentioned. As far as marketing for the Main Street District, we are going to continue focusing on our destination downtown brand, and that's in partnership with Visit Bastrop. We do believe collectively that our downtown is a destination in and of itself, and so we really want to, over the next 2 years, take that to the next level as far as marketing. We also are going to be building out an organization branding that our community works and volunteerism will fall under. We are going to be working on improving the Downtown Bastrop website presence. We are going to continue working on our social media presence too. You can always improve reach and engagement. We want to work on rack cards, so we are partnering with Visit Bastrop along with the Historical Society to do a collective rack card where Visit Bastrop will have an overall visitor's guide, and then each of us will have a rack card that fits into that overall bigger program. So that way we can take those rack cards out and distribute them individually, or they fit into the bigger program, so it all makes sense brand-wise. Again, I mentioned the Shop Local campaign, and then we will be having a written marketing plan, which is very exciting. That's something we lack right now, that will have a target marketing research, market strategies, and of course metrics to measure success. Training and resources. So one of the things that we are very excited to build out is a small business toolkit. As you can imagine, there are so many resources out there, both in Bastrop County and outside of Bastrop County for our small business entrepreneurs. So we'd like to put that all together so our businesses can be more successful. We're going to be starting a quarterly newsletter. We are going to continue partnering with the Chamber of Commerce on their trainings, and we'd like to implement a scholarship program to ensure that if many of our small businesses within the district, whether a member or not, are able to attend these trainings. The Chamber trainings are very well done. They are timely and very professional, and so we think the more members of our district we can get there, the better. For business recruitment, one of the things we really want to improve in doing is telling the story of Main Street. We like to say we have so many characters downtown, and they all have the most interesting stories of where they came from and how they got to Main Street. And so we'd like to do a better job of telling their stories and let people understand the magic that you're a part of when you do business on Main Street. We'd like to work on the Imagine the Possibilities tour. Elgin has recently hosted 2 very successful Imagine the Possibilities tour. So we would like to find out from them, what did they do to make that so successful? What can we borrow and share? We'd like to do some historic tax training for people to understand all the incentives that are involved with taking on a downtown building. We'd like to better use downtowntexas.org, which is our database of empty buildings downtown that are ready for use for either purchase or lease. And we want to ensure that we are focusing on the economic vitality of the entire district. So remembering that we don't just represent Main Street, we actually represent 62 city blocks, which starts all the way at Film Alley, goes down Chestnut, encompasses all of our downtown historic district, and then goes down to Coffee Dog. Also, part of y'all's funding goes towards continuing education. What I'd specifically like to point to is next year, I'll begin training on a PCED, which is a professional community economic development. And specifically what that does, it's a nationally recognized certification geared towards economic sustainability of community-based space, as well as OU Placemaking Conference, which directly speaks to the economic vitality of our district. I would be remiss in doing a presentation about the Main Street program without mentioning our community partners, of which you'll see that the EDC is proudly displayed there. Like I mentioned, y'all have been a strong partner for the last 12 years, and the success of the Main Street program is really a testament to their partnership with the EDC and the success of y'all's program as well. So thank you for your all support. Thank you for all our community partners as we work together to ensure that we are all helping to make Bastrop a better place to live. And just to quickly discuss next steps, we are doing this huge launch of our re-envisioned Main Street program. So we are re-rolling out our boards. We are trying to reignite that grassroots movement of the Main Street program. We are getting ready already for Lost Pines Christmas. We have several events over the Lost Pines Christmas season, but more importantly, we're really focusing right now on putting together that marketing campaign to roll out in conjunction with that for fourth quarter. We are gearing up for the Main Street Rehabilitation Project, which I know that y'all have been talking about, and that goes hand in hand with your project for the Loop 150 Trail. The build-out of 921, as a community partner, we have been in discussion of being a part of communicating with the district on what's going on and helping to set up closures and things like that. And then we are also at the same time getting ready for another first quarter Shop Local campaign, so that way we can hopefully start our small businesses downtown out strong. So again, you'll find in your packet and in a handout a line item breakdown of exactly how much those projects are estimated to cost under each of those line items. They'll be tracked throughout the year by line item. So at the end of the year, we'll have a detailed report of exactly how much was spent on all of those items, and then we'll be able to better estimate for next year. But so, any questions? I know it's a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll all have many questions. So thank you for putting this together, breaking it out, so we can actually see where what your projections are specifically. I think reconciling the budget is always really important, which I don't think we've had kind of recently. So we appreciate that, of course. Let me ask just a couple of questions to get started, and then I know other people want to jump in. So I'm looking at number 2, which is marketing, and marketing is going to be your largest expense with the what you're asking for, the 29,550. For clarification, I also just want to ask specifically if this is the line that is promotional, that is considered part of our 10% cap on promotional spending.
That's for Cameron, Rebecca, not for you.
Yes, sorry.
I realized that was above my pay grade.
Yeah, but when he starts talking about this, review what's in here to think, is this in the right category? Does it fit the definition of promotional? Because if this is the amount that is going towards promotional, we have a cap on what we can spend on promotional, which means that we have to adjust our budget accordingly or adjust this budget accordingly.
And from what I understand, and I might be mistaken because, again, this is y'all's area of expertise, is that you can go to past years and pull your 10% from there.
So
No.
there's an asterisk to that. Per my discussions with the comptroller, you can recapture 1 year if you plan for it in your budget and you set it aside in that year as such to carry forward if you don't spend that money, which we have not done.
But the way I had understood it was if we had spent the 10%, there's nothing to carry forward.
That is correct. And this was categorized in the resolution on page 33 at the bottom as promotional as to the 10%. So yes, this does, Chair, to go to your question, it does go to the 10%.
All 50,000 or just this 29?
29.
Currently all 50,000 for this past year, but moving forward in next year's budget, we can separate that.
Oh, I was just thinking it was the 29.
So moving forward into next
yes.
year's budget, we will separate that in the resolution $29,000 as part of promotional, and then the rest as part of their administration cost, et cetera.
If we leave it with these numbers.
That is correct.
So just out of curiosity, Synchronist is a CRM platform that you have purchased. Is that what you were saying?
Actually, Synchronist is the platform that EDC uses, both for CRM and for economic data management. And so they actually gave us a license under y'all's, which is a good thing, not only because we didn't have to pay for it, but now our data lives together, so they have access to our data.
Great. I was just concerned that everybody was out there doing a separate one. I wanted to make sure we weren't all doing something separate. So thank you for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
So I guess the next largest bucket of money is the continuing education opportunities. If you could, you have quite a few conferences here. You could maybe talk to us a little bit about the difference between one and the other. Who's going to be attending? What are you going to be learning? That would be very helpful.
Certainly. Well, I'll start off by saying that our contract to remain accredited as a Texas Main Street program requires for me to attend many of these. So that is why they are there. I unfortunately have very little latitude into what I can attend outside of that. So I'll speak first to the ones that I chose to attend. The first being the PCED certification. Like I mentioned, that's a national certification that speaks directly to economic development in a community setting. So that's a 3-year program, and at the end of those 3 years, I'll take an exam that will make me PCED certified. I think that will probably most greatly affect my ability to help the district thrive. I am, from what I can gather and from who I speak to who has this certification, I'm most interested in learning about the strategies behind reducing vacancy rates and improving sales tax figures for your district. The second being the OU Placemaking Conference.
Rebecca, before you go to the second one,
Sure.
that PCED certification, so it's you attend a conference, and once you attend 3 conferences, you're certified, or there's additional studies, or?
Right, so it's a week-long course, and you have to go once a year. You have to go for 3 years in a row to the courses, and then there's self-study that goes along with that before you take the certification.
And you individually are becoming certified, right? Not the
Correct.
program itself?
Correct.
And is $2,000 the total cost of that 1 week, or that's just a portion that you're asking BEDC to pay for?
It's $2,000 per year.
So that is the total cost of the certification?
The total cost will be $6,000 over the 3 years.
Okay, but I guess what I'm saying is that's the total cost per 1 week per year?
Yes, ma'am.
It's what you pay to attend. It's not your travel. It's not your...
No, that includes everything.
She said it's not, and you said no, that includes everything. So does the conference cost $2,000, or
No, ma'am.
$2,000 includes your travel,
The $2,000 includes travel, stay, and everything that goes along with that 1 week course.
Okay, sorry. I just wanted to ask the questions before we went to the next item. Go ahead.
Sure. The next is the OU Placemaking Conference. As I'm sure y'all are aware, in the industry of economic development, placemaking is a very hot word right now. So really, the purpose of the Placemaking Conference is to learn how to really ingrain a sense of place into a community, because when you have an ingrained sense of place, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business retention, when it comes to business expansion and new business recruitment, it really helps to take care of itself. So making strategic moves as far as design, as far as programming, as far as activities within our district, as I know y'all are aware, has a huge impact on business retention, business expansion, and new business. The next is the Texas Downtown Association Conference.
Rebecca, I'm sorry. Is
Sure.
it the same thing? The $1,500 is the conference, your travel, your expenses. Is it a one-day conference? Is it a...
Off the top of my head, I'd like to say it's a 3-day conference.
And it's includes everything but your salary? Is that another way of saying it's your travel, it's your expenses, it's the conference?
Yes, ma'am.
And it's a standalone once-a-year conference?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
The next is the Texas Downtown Association Conference. This year that will be in Georgetown, and that is put on by the Texas Downtown Association. We are a member of both the Texas Main Street and the Texas Downtown Association. So the Texas Downtown Association really works on community economic development. I just attended the Texas Downtown Association Roundtable in Lockhart, and to give you a little example of what we learned there, we had a presentation done both by Lockhart, which if y'all haven't been to Lockhart yet, there's a lot of really cute little things going on in their downtown. So they have a great commissary space that they're multi-using as both a bakery up front and a restaurant. And then the afternoon was spent learning about community profit corporations, so community benefit corporations. So we had a great presentation from a developer out of Mineral Wells who is doing a lot of really exciting things there with the Crazy Horse Hotel. And so they're just learning opportunities really where we get to network with other communities who see similar challenges and opportunities, and to see how they're taking the opportunities and really moving their communities to the next level.
Is that optional or required by Main Street?
That one's required. The next is the TDA conference, which that, again, is so, and I'm speaking to a contract that I read several months ago, but I believe the way that the Texas Main Street program contract works for conferences, I think they have like a list of 5 perhaps, and you have to choose 3 to attend. So we have our Main Street program for as far back as I can see. We've always attended all of them because they're learning experiences, but that's to say perhaps we only have to attend 3 out of the 5. I'd have to go back and pull the contract to see exactly contractually how many we need to attend. So the TDA conference, the Main Street Now conference, and the Real Places conference. Of those, the Real Places conference, that one's really really tied to the Texas Historical Commission. So that one's really historic preservation based.
So there are, and I guess the certification, if you count that as a conference, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So of these 6, you're saying you're required to attend 3 to keep the Main Street certification?
Of the last 4.
So Texas Downtown, TDA, Main Street, and Real Places, you have to attend 3 of those.
If I'm remembering correctly, it is something to that. It may be 2 out of 5. I can't say to be certain. But there is a certain number out of the total that you can choose from to attend to keep your accreditation.
And the OU placemaking and the PCED are not on that list, but you've listed the reasons of why you had chosen to attend those. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm just going to jump back to marketing for a minute since that is the largest bucket.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you clarify if you share any of these expenses with Visit Bastrop? If so, where do you overlap? I know you have 2 different focus areas, but I know you can't help but overlap some in some places. So if you can share that. And then what is your total operating budget for the year?
So that is difficult to say simply because I have community funds in my account that comes directly from PP&L that are earmarked for certain community organizations. So there are things in my account that I don't have direct access to. For instance, those community funds. Also, Christmas lighting comes out of my account, although I have no access to those funds.
So what is it with those removed?
Well, I think it comes in right, is it right over 300,000? Does that sound right? I believe it comes in right over 300,000.
That's your best estimate with those other things removed, or 300,000 with those things included?
With those things included.
Okay, so it's 300,000, and we know the community support funds, I think, were around 75,000, something like that. I can go pull my budget book, and the Christmas lighting was 60. So, okay, that 160 for the lighting. Okay.
I can pull my total budget and give y'all exact numbers. It would be more helpful.
Board, I think that'd be good information, and I know I have access to it. I just don't have it memorized. You don't have it either. Okay. So,
You'd have to have more money in your budget.
So that doesn't include, there are line items that are grayed out to me in code. For instance, my salary, that's not counted in what I see in code. It's on a higher line item than me.
Yeah, 'cause it only leaves you $65,000.
Right.
Of which you're asking 52. All right, board, jump in.
If I understand it right, we have been paying $50,000 out of the budget for the last several years. So what you're actually asking for is just a small increase to 52.8, right?
No, I was actually only asking for the 50. I was just giving you, I didn't want to cut out a non-round number, so I just went ahead and put everything in there. But no, it's the same 50,000, and from what I have been told and I can find, it has always been 50,000 since the inception of Main Street.
Okay, thank you.
Angela, you can confirm that, right? It's always been 50, but I think there's been different things it's been spent on, but it's been 50.
It has been 50 for the last several years, but my recollection is that it started at about 35, and that was 10 years ago or so.
But for the last 5 years, it's been 50.
It has been 50. And the reason, Ron, I just wanted to clarify, is that this was a 2-year contract. When Sean decided to paper everything, he wrote this was a 2-year contract, so it's up for renewal.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify it has been 50. I want to know if they were asking for an increase, or was it pretty much the same is where I was going with that.
And we have historically partnered with Main Street from the very beginning of Main Street. We did a lot of facade renovations and building restorations and air conditioning and stuff on Main Street to get it in shape. And so it's been a historical partnership.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. That's really where I was getting, my understanding was that, thank you, Angela, for preparing the budget. It certainly goes back at least, let's say, easily 5 years that it's been 50,000, but over those 5 years, I think sometimes the 50,000 was only facade grants, or a good portion of it was facade grants, or whatever.
The facade grants went away, Nancy, when?
That was
separate.
in addition to the 50?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The facade grants were separate, but we had a line item that contributed to Main Street that was separate from the facade grants.
That is correct. And I remember that being all the way back to Joe Newman.
I remember it as
when I was hired 10 years ago.
35 or 40. Yeah.
So, Angela, for this year's budget that we're looking at, are the items that Rebecca is presenting, is that prior to the 2-year contract? Is this the items that we were covering, or were we just writing a $50,000 check to Main Street?
Prior to it being papered,
Yes.
as I alluded to, it was, but there wasn't anything in writing that said what it was that we were.
It was just a transfer into
it was
that.
It was a gentleman's agreement, if you would. Yes, and so we decided to get it.
But it was
in
papered
writing.
2 years ago to do a 2-year.
Correct. Yes. In 2017, yes.
But when you papered it 2 years ago, was that 50,000 all promotional?
That's a great question. And the way the attorney, I believe it was Charlie Zek.
Correct. The resolution reads that it's all promotional.
Yeah. So we would definitely have to
Revise the agreement.
figure out how that impacts the other budget. But, 50,000, I mean, you're probably one of the few that haven't gone up in your price over the course of several years. So any other discussion here? I'm sure there's some other questions. I was curious though about the overlap of some of the marketing, if, just kind of where you're feeling with that.
Absolutely. So we actually work very closely with Visit Bastrop. We are meeting or talking normally at least once a week. Whenever they have an event going on, we are the local marketing arm for them. For instance, they had Corvette Invasion, so our goal is to really get the locals there at their events, and then they really work hard to get the word out statewide about our events when we really just focus on getting the locals there. So it's a great partnership. They help us in terms of overall branding strategy. There's certain things that they can add into their contract with their PR firm and their contract with their designer that's no additional cost. So there are things that they roll in for us and design for us that we then can just pay the printing on or items like that.
So like on the Corvette Invasion, when you say it's about getting the locals there, locals as in attendance, or did you work with the local businesses on Main Street so that they knew that Corvette Invasion was coming and help them with marketing strategy?
All of the above.
And so give us an example of how you worked with the local businesses.
So anytime we have a big group coming to town, we try to do a discount specific for that group. So flash your badge and get free chips and salsa at Gracie's, or whatever it may be. And so we work specifically with each individual business, and then we design something with Visit Bastrop that goes in each of their bags, that lets them know about all the specific discounts going on in the downtown district for them. We also work with the downtown businesses, of course, anytime we shut down Main Street. So we, shut down Main Street for a portion of the day for the parade. So we work very closely with them to make sure that we're communicating and being transparent. So we had the parade, and then the last piece of that is using our social media marketing to get the locals there to enjoy the event. So I know I was there and I saw a lot of the locals there enjoying Corvettes, whether they had a Corvette or not. So it's just an opportunity for us to have some good community fun. So.
And is your request to do another 2-year contract? Is that your desire?
Yes, ma'am.
I assume so, but I thought I would ask. So where are we, Chair? From a workshop standpoint, it's just a discussion and then we'll make a decision next time, or where do we stand on this?
Well, it is just a discussion to get all the questions out on the table, and we don't have to vote on this, Angela, correct, until next meeting? I did see a resolution in the larger package, budget package.
That is correct. Ms. Waldron and the Finance Department rewrote hers. She adjusted it to $79,000, but this one has not been included yet. The thinking is that until we got the board's feeling on whether or not they wanted to enter into a new agreement, it would have been a waste of time and legal funds to have the resolutions redone. So we wanted to get a feel from the board. We will have these on the next agenda item.
And that's in plenty of time to get to the city for their timeline.
Yes, ma'am, because the contracts don't expire until the end of September, but as long as it's in the budget, we're fine. And that has to be done in August.
Okay. Then we're good.
And I'm assuming that's going to give us enough time to do any kind of changes in what bucket it comes into, whether it's going to be promotional or marketing. That'll give us enough time to figure that out.
Yeah, so we may be coming back to you for some shifting.
Sure.
Into to the different categories, but I don't think we'll know that until we take an overall look at the entire marketing, what the category for the 10% promotional. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay.
That is correct. We're working on that right now as we speak.
I know. All right. Well, thank you very much. Do you have any questions of us?
No, I just want to thank you all for having me here this evening and letting us speak to all the exciting things we're doing with Main Street. We thank you for your continuous support over the last 12 years. You, thanks to y'all's financing, have enabled the Main Street program to achieve a lot of things. So we thank you for that. If over the next month or so before we go to vote on the resolution, if y'all need follow-up information or have questions, I'm happy to help with you. And if we need to shift anything around so it fits better in your budget, happy to do that as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so let's see, where's my, I think we have,
Next up, we have Trey Job,
oh, good, okay.
Public Works Director, the City of Bastrop. That contract, too, was done at the same time, 2017. Now, unlike the one with the Main Street program, it's set to renew automatically unless one party has a change. And so the City of Bastrop is requesting that it be increased by $60,000 or $61,000, depending on what the number is you look at. The contract that we currently have with them is page 30 of your packet, and then a little later on is the one that Ms. Waldron changed and provided us with. Prior to the papering of this deal, it was also basically a handshake agreement, and it also included the EDC helping to pay for mowing around the monuments and certain other areas. So about 3 years ago, the board instructed Mr. Kirkpatrick to ask the City of Bastrop to, Trey will recall this, provide us with basically invoicing and itemization of all of the time they spent doing those programs. And once we decided to take the mowing to somebody else, they agreed upon the number of $18,000 for administrative services and $7,500 for shared services. And that is on page 24 of the budget. And the memo is on page 25.
So this is simply the $18,000 and the $7,500 was based off the administrative process of administering payroll, things of that nature. That's what Ms. Waldron's been doing. This is actually the administrative support for, and this is simply cost recovery for the time that the staff is associated with these two projects that were brought to us by the EDC, and they'll go into construction this year. One is for the downtown River Loop, the other is for the MLK and Technology Drive extension. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this project. Talking about the downtown River Loop, it'll be done in 3 phases. The phase 1B will actually be taken care of by TxDOT. Let me give you some background first. How about that? Sorry, so we can get to where we're headed. Originally, the EDC designed a downtown trail expansion project to complete the River Loop. At that time, they got Develoment Construction to come in and do the design. They had an estimated cost of around $680,000. Keep Bastrop County Beautiful actually received the Governor's Award in June of 2017, and they brought that money to the city. We then said the EDC can have this $130,000 put towards that project. At the same time, we applied for a grant and were awarded for $475,220. So those funds together almost covered the original cost of the project. Once that was done, the EDC, again, I believe you had actually budgeted the entire amount for all 3 phases. Once you received the $130,000 from the Governor's Award. Once the additional money came in, you were able to reallocate funds and only have to pay for the portion remaining between the funds allocated, the $640,000 that we received in grant funds, and you would be paying the additional amount over that $640,000. Project has already been approved. The grants have been awarded. We have already discussed a timeline to start construction. The project AFA and SPA are ready to execute. That's some documents that you have to do when you manage a project with TxDOT. And then the project schedule is still moving a little bit, but we wanted to make sure it coordinated really well with the Main Street Rehabilitation Project, since they are in the same area, so I expect construction to start sometime in early 2020. This is, again, just simply cost recovery for the time allocated with myself, the city engineer, and then 3 other people from my staff, Curtis Hancock, David Wareth, which is the street superintendent, and a little bit of coordination that'll have to happen with the park superintendent, David Unick. So basically, took the hours and benefits for those folks, put together a simple formula and the time that'll be associated with what it'll take to get this project, keep the project moving. And this is your total for $24,043.48. And that's again, the 2 weeks is just 80 man hours, and it's broken down. I didn't want to have specific employee information up here, so I thought that's something you would like. We can get that breakdown from Ms. Waldron. I just lumped them all together. But essentially, it's the construction inspection piece is 24 weeks, 8 hours a week, and that's them rotating in and out, Curtis and the guys in the public works field. Final review and close out, and then this is it. It's pretty simple. It's what it'll cost the city to recover.
Yes, sir. Would you remind me again, what's the green portion of the map? What is that?
The green portion is actually, here is what TxDOT's going to install. TxDOT will install here. This is part of the project. This is what the governor's award will take care of, because it has to be done at TxDOT right away. This is existing sidewalk as you come across the bridge and you see down Main Street. And then this is the section that actually goes all the way over the build as part of this project as well. Mm-hmm.
So at the last council meeting, we approved $140,000 for the engineering that had to be done by TxDOT certified, correct? So when I look at this, am I right to assume that what you're calling administrative oversight is really kind of project management?
It is. It's project management.
And project management for TxDOT is going to require a certified TxDOT engineer. The three of you, are any of you TxDOT certified?
So what it requires is not a certified engineer, but it requires somebody who has been through TxDOT's training program, and we have signed folks up for that program.
You have signed people up to go to that training?
That is correct. Bowman Construction had nobody. The engineer that you hired had no one that was certified, so I've had 5 of my people apply for the class.
So the $140,000 that we put in is to
designed.
take care of those guys who are going to go out there and do the project management.
So
that's right, the
that is only the
design.
design work. You
That's
hired
right.
an engineer to do the design work. He will, I would imagine as part of his contract, I haven't read it, he has some project management piece in there where he will come out monthly. He'll make sure the bills are getting paid on time. They'll review to make sure the work's been done. That's pretty standard for a project engineer. The people that I'm talking about with the city will actually be on the ground making sure it's done correctly, and it's in conjunction with the Main Street coordination. This will actually be folks on the ground that will be out there making decisions.
And your decisions will be different than Bowman's how?
Well, simply, Bowman won't be there and it's not a full design. You're going to need somebody that's going to field manage this thing on a daily basis.
And let me ask you this. When you wrote the grant that you received, either or, probably the larger of the two, would not have this been one of the line items in the grant?
It was not. You would think it would be. So there is some cost associated, but the city submitted to take care of this. I'm going to say this project was actually done a little siloed, in my opinion.
Say that again?
I said, to me, this project was a little bit siloed. I don't think that was taken into account. It was done in a silo. This was actually worked out with the city engineer and Sean at the time. And what they came back with this project. Once we realized how far away it was from getting started, I realized there was going to be quite a bit more time, and that's what this expense is, to take care of the difference. A project that was brought forward. Does that make sense?
To get part of this award, did the city have to put up either in-kind services or money services, and this is what our part is, or the city's part?
No, there's no in-kind.
There was no in-kind or anything? So
This is simply cost recovery.
Okay, let me ask it maybe a different way then. This amount of money is so that we can, it was not included in the design contract with Bowman at all.
Not to my knowledge. Again, that was a contract that was done out. It wasn't done with the city.
Right.
You know, I think when I think about Bowman, they might not say project management, but they do say administrative oversight in their contracts.
Okay.
So the difference between their administrative oversight and your administrative oversight is what exactly?
The only difference that I could tell you is we'll actually be able to be there and verify the quantities and coordinate with what's going to happen on the ground. Bowman will absolutely, I don't believe they'll have a representative there every day. I could be wrong, but I don't think they will.
Trey, I just want to make sure I'm clear. My understanding, and Jean may clarify, and actually, what's your name again? Cameron may be able to clarify as well. attorney, the unknown attorney. You're not saying that you're going to be signing off on their draws and stuff, because Bowman will be the engineer signing off and approving quantities and saying this is ready for a bill to be paid, correct?
That's
or are you
correct.
saying that you're going to be doing that?
They will review it. It will be submitted to us, and it's through a city grant. So we will have to administer that grant to make sure it gets reimbursed. And there is time associated with that. So because it's a TxDOT grant, there are criteria that you have to follow. And we were awarded the grant. The EDC was not awarded the grant. And it's going to take extra time, and this is the cost for the town associated with it. Does that make sense?
Okay, so part of it is because we perhaps did not understand that by going for the TxDOT grant that we needed to have this type of requirement in order to get it. Is that possible?
This is going to be awarded, so TxDOT has two types of projects. It can be state managed administratively, and they can take it to bid, they can let the project, they can do it all, or the local government can do it. This project is for the local government to take it to award and bid, review the specs, things of that nature. If that makes any sense. No?
How are you going to document your time?
We can track it weekly.
Time cards?
Sure.
Sign
Well, we can write it down. Yes, we can track it if you'd like.
So I was trying to think of these two projects independent of one another, but it is a big chunk of change.
Sure.
So to me, this is a more maybe a more complex project than the MLK project.
It will be.
Mainly because of the TxDOT requirements.
That's correct.
And so I did some math, and they both start out structured with coordination 2 weeks, bidding 2 phases, blah blah. So then I just went with the hours and did a calculation of the hours, and this more complex project comes in less than the easier project. This one comes in at $107.34, and the other one comes in at $156.73. So there's not consistency in the way they were approached, unless I'm missing something. I mean, I was just trying to do a simple kind of math sort of thing, but thinking this one might have some extra costs, and trying to figure out what those were.
It's an extra employee, one to coordinate with the parks, and they have to leave. This one has some park work associated with it, the other one does not.
But less per hour, if you add up the hours.
Because it requires less hours from an administrative level. So it's all broken down on the level, and that's why I said we could get you a more detailed breakdown. I didn't put that up here, the amount of hours spent per person. But basically, you're right. This project will take some TxDOT coordination. It has to go through the park. It also has to be coordinated with Main Street. The MLK project, which seems simpler, has not even been close to finish a design yet. So it's going to take quite a bit for administrative work.
Are there any permits waived?
Other permits? Not to my knowledge.
I don't think so. Could there be permits waived?
I'm sure that's a discussion for the council.
I don't think you could say sure there would be.
Well, no, that's a discussion for the council, but I know surely there'll be permits.
So, Chair, I think you're asking a really good question. My fundamental question is way simpler than that because of my little simple mind. When I see man hours times expense plus, is it man hours times?
It's the same key as the equals button. I just realized that, but thanks for catching that.
Okay, because I was like, is it man hours times expense plus an additional 24,000,
no, I'm sorry,
or is it supposed to
amount.
be? I'm thinking it's 24,000 because we've made it. So what I'm hearing you say today is that you have estimated the man hours that the city's going to take. You've blended 4 people's salaries come up with an hourly rate, multiplied it by the number of man hours that you've estimated, and come up with $24,000.
That's correct. It is simply cost recovery.
Okay, so the picky question that I'm a little bit confused on is I don't understand how you're going to spend. You have bidding phase 2 weeks, and the project coordination phase was 2 weeks, and you said really it's 80 hours. I don't know what 4 people are going to spend 80 hours on during a bidding process, because I thought we hired a contractor to bid the job.
You did, and I've met with your Bowman contractor 4 times, and he still doesn't have a plan. That's the bottom line. I have met with him repeatedly, and it's going to continue, I imagine, to be that way, which is why you got this estimate.
And is it because it's the difference between the design as you go, and now we have to come up with detailed plans?
They've changed engineers 4 times since the project started.
Okay, so if I was John Q. Citizen and I had Susie Q. Development, the meeting with my contractor, is that part of the permit fees, or that you wouldn't meet with me at all?
If you were a developer and you came in, and there are certain permitting and development fees, correct, and that's also going to be based on the cost recovery for the hours.
Okay, but you didn't answer my question, because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we as EDC, we planned on hiring Bowman to design a project, to bid that project, and we planned on paying the construction and the permit fees, because we wouldn't want us to not do something that everybody else is doing.
Sure.
So my question is, if I was a developer and I had paid the construction fee, are you saying the meetings that you've been having with Bowman would not be included in those construction fees?
I'm saying your project isn't far enough along to get it to council for award without some coordination with us outside of that.
Your project? Take a shot.
Those plans.
Okay, so basically we're not at a point, there's so much pre-work to be done, and the pre-work is going to cost us $24,000 to get it to the stage where we can actually now engage Bowman to do what our contract with Bowman is.
Yes,
so
that's correct.
We're not
there are
to
pieces
the point for them to actually engage yet.
Okay, but we're not paying $24,000 for project pre-work. The $24,000 is for the whole thing.
Well, that's in your bidding phase and your early project coordination, and then once you get into construction, now we'll actually do some inspection.
All of that is included in the $24,000.
Yes, that's correct. But you're right. The original coordination, when I say that 80 hours, is not all at one time. That is over until we get it ready.
This is an estimate of the cost of what it's going to, for them to get this thing to where it needs to be.
That's correct.
And to manage Bowman to the point where they can then engage and then do what the contract with us.
So you will get the $24,000 plus the construction and inspection fees.
The 24th, I don't know that there's an additional construction and inspection fee. Are you talking about for development review or for the?
Yeah, for the project.
I think they should
I'm
cover
just
it.
trying to find out how much we're out, because maybe if it's not construction and inspection fees and it's this money, maybe I don't want us double counting.
I think
things.
that this should cover it, because this doesn't.
You think,
this doesn't
or
include.
or you want to get back with us because this is a workshop.
We would love to get back with you once I
That's
talk
what
to the once I talk to the planning department. But I don't know. Well, let me talk to the planning department.
Because I just like I don't want to think it's $24,000 to find out it's $24,000 plus $10,000 worth of fees. I also don't want to do $24,000 for this, and Bowman didn't realize you were doing this, so we're paying Bowman for something that and if it needs to be you guys, because it's a lot of things to coordinate. I just don't want us to be double counting from a budget standpoint, since this is a budget workshop.
Correct.
No, you're right.
And just perhaps we might want to have a conversation with Bowman, circle back around, and clarify with them so that we have a better understanding of what their scope of work is versus what we're going to have to be providing by the extra money.
Do you have comments?
Yes, I was going to have that discussion. I was going to say it would be beneficial to have Bowman come and present what part of the contract is included with this. Because we need to cover the fees associated with it. It's awesome
It's my opinion. It's fabulous that we got the grants, but with or without the grants, we need to understand the cost and pay our fair share and make sure we're covering everything we're supposed to be
Right, 'cause we're
covering.
gonna be
But we
asked to-
shouldn't be doing it 2 or 3 times.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to the MLK project, this one's a little not near as far along. That's why you see the increased expense. And when you were asked about development fees, I would imagine, and again I'll clarify with the planning department, because there's some work on private property here associated, there may be some fees, and I will find that out.
Now, this one does surprise me. This one is very straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with Bowman before.
Mm-hmm.
Worked with Bowman on Agnes.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't have a project manager there like this.
Right.
How come now with let's call it similar, it's a road,
Sure. It's similar.
similar project,
I think
but now,
I can simply tell you, they brought in the preliminary plans. I've taken a look at them, noticed what's missing, such as streetlights, things of that nature. And I think we're going to coordinate that and get that taken care of, so you know what the expense is up front, and nothing comes back to bite you later. That's what this coordination is going to help with.
so this will be a life without change orders.
That's the plan.
36,988 is a pretty big change order.
that are going to take some interlocal agreement discussions. That's what's going to happen in that project coordination.
I think this is another discussion that we have with Bowman on this project too.
Yes, I would like to hear from Bowman as well.
Is there anything not on this project that we had on Agnes?
The detention pond.
That's
You did not build a detention pond with Agnes. You did build a channel. You did coordinate drainage underneath it, yes. But you're doing that here as well, but you did not have a pond associated with it. That's the difference.
Well, okay, so technically we didn't have a pond, but we had a channel, and this time we don't have a channel. So we addressed the drainage as a part of the street.
He designed the culverts to get the water under the street, which he's doing here as well to get into the pond. And this one doesn't have a pond, or Agnes does not have a pond. It just went under the street. He's doing that here as well, but it's going into a pond.
Are there sidewalks here?
I don't believe that there are.
Are there sidewalks on Agnes?
I have not seen the full set of plans. There are
Lights?
sidewalks on.
Did they have lights on the plan?
In our last discussion, they were going to put that in their estimate.
Well, the lights were in the opinion of probable cost.
Mm-hmm. And so they may have brought that back. But that's discussions that we've had in coordination, which was about a 4-hour meeting, 4.5-hour meeting, to make sure those things got in there.
So I guess
was a
what I'm
freebie.
asking is how, if it wasn't BEDC, if it was another developer, you just wouldn't meet with them, or how would you get the cost covered for another developer that was building a main road?
That's something that your engineer would have handled. They would have, the engineer and the owner would have come up with that and brought it to us for plan review.
Say that again.
So the owner and the engineer who was developing the property would have brought a complete set of plans in for review. Now, we may have caught it at review if things were missing. We are actually project coordinating on the front end to make sure those things aren't missing. So it's just easier to know.
You have been, or you're proposing to?
I have been, and I imagine we will continue. This is what I think will take.
Is that smart business? I mean, shouldn't we hold our developers accountable for the contracts that we make
I did not
with
have
them?
a contract with Bowman. That's the problem. The contract that was being managed between your director and Bowman. You no longer have a director that was managing to make sure those things were there. Does that make sense?
We could hire our own project manager, correct?
You absolutely can.
I'm going to suggest that we utilize this as a lessons learned, and that we put together the things that have fallen through the crack on some of those things so that we don't repeat the same. I'm not going to call it a mistake. I'm just going to say that we take this as a lessons learned, and we try not to do this on the next project that we have, because there seems to be things falling through the crack.
I say we get with Bowman. We check out everything. We manage this project by either hiring. You don't have time for this.
I agree, but it's got to be done. So
It
and has
does
done
need
right.
to be done,
Yeah.
but I don't think you correcting someone else's mistakes is a good way to move forward.
Or to spend public money.
Or to spend public money.
Sure.
So I think that, it's eye-opening, and it's time now to talk to Bowman.
So, Chair, I have a question for Mr. Joe, and it's for clarification.
Sure.
So I understand the shared services, and they were estimated at $7,500, and that makes perfect sense to me. We wouldn't want to have our own IT department and our own HR department,
Right.
and we need to be paying our fair share, and
Sure.
that's what the resolution is addressing, the shared services. The administrative services of $18,000. How I am assuming somebody made an estimate of $18,000 is what it would take to help with some of this coordination stuff, and then you had an EDC board that came out with these huge projects, and $18,000 wasn't enough to cover it, and that's why you're asking for the increase.
Correct.
So what is included in the $18,000?
That 18,000 is actually the estimate based off what Ms. Waldron put together, and it's just for payroll and things of that nature.
No, that's the $7,500.
So then the additional administrative has to be time with staff. I put
I'm not
this
sure
estimate
that it
together and
is.
I put the other.
Because
I don't know.
I know that 7,500 wouldn't have covered the audit portion.
Well, that was separate.
I never
Right.
found that
In the
amount for
resolution,
the
the audit.
audit.
Correct me,
amount.
Angela, could you speak to that?
You're correct, and the audit was supposed to be separate. It has a separate line item.
Well,
But-
we have a separate line item because we were thinking about doing it ourselves, but I don't have a line item for what the city charged to do it as a shared service.
Correct. Also in there is the, some other things. I see the disconnect here, but HR and finance, they're the ones that run all of our checks and our payroll and everything. That's the administrative services portion. The shared services is, the audit's there. I don't.
No, it says that
It
excluding
does-
it says
Oh,
in the first
okay,
part,
that's why
excluding
it's
the
not
annual
making
audit.
sense to me. Thank you. Reoccurring and contractual services with the EDC utilizes and receives benefits. Software, things like Adobe, Microsoft 365, those things that we get licenses from under the city that actually gives us a discount. That's the part I was missing.
Yeah. Yeah, if you could, and get back with this, what portion of what I was assuming to be part of the administrative services was actually for the audit, because that is something that we've talked about in the last couple of years, that we would do our own audit. And I know we put a $10,000 line item in our budget, so I think that's within the $18,000 to tell you the truth, but I'm a little foggy.
But I'm sorry, I'm not
I
clear
know.
on that. No, that's
Yeah.
what Tracy put together. I just put together this one.
So Trey, I need to correct myself. Now, looking at, and Angela, keep me honest. Administrative services are $18,000, and on the Exhibit A, it says it covers 4 items: preparing financial and investment reports, providing accounts payable, payroll, and purchasing, providing a repository for records, office, and conference space, and providing information technology. Those 4 things together are $18,000. And then the shared services is a comprehensive annual financial review, employee benefits for the employees of BEDC, which I would think also kind of includes some HR time, because they can't get those benefits unless they're talking to HR about it. The technology, software license, and maintenance. It's those 3. So the $18,000 and the $7,500, there are no projects associated with that. So it is
That's
none
correct.
of your time. That is completely separate from this.
That's correct.
Okay.
And we do the same thing from an enterprise fund. So if there is additional cost associated with something, the water and wastewater administrative they transfer, there is a fund transfer every year to cover cost just exactly like you're talking about,
Yeah.
which is the 18,000.
He said there's different buckets, and you got to keep the buckets
Mm-hmm.
straight. So there's one HR, and they would allocate costs to the different buckets as
Yes.
appropriate and
Yes.
allowed by law. Ms. Waldron is probably
That's-
watching, and I know
that's
she's
correct.
following all the rules.
I am sure that I am, yes. Not saying it appropriately, but basically we all have to pay our share in for the administrative piece at a utility level.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the 7,500 and the 18,000 is literally the business side of it.
Right.
And then construction permit fees, inspection fees that BEDC's projects pay, whether we do it through the engineer or we write a check to the city for the construction inspection fee. It feels like BEDC attorney, while we are all wanting clarity on is, I thought we had an engineering contract that covered all those things and was a soups to nuts. And so if there's a gap between what we thought we had contracted for services and city staff is having to fill in that gap, then they need to be compensated. And if that gap was covered by the contract, then we may need to decompensate both, right? That we just need to make sure that there's not a gap that has not been contractually contracted.
That's correct. You need to find the legal gaps and the legal overlaps.
And this is based off some discussion that I'd had with Bowman after we went to TxDOT, where there was some initial engineering done, but not. I'm assuming that you've gotten more engineering work since then.
Oh, so you're saying maybe if you
Maybe-
better understand what
maybe
Bowman's
we're fine.
contracted, then maybe you don't have to put this kind of
Yes.
time into it. Okay. That's
You
fair.
shouldn't have to put this kind of time into
I'm
it.
disappointed if you are.
Jean, did you want to say something?
Just so I'm clear, talking to Bowman, if Bowman has an engineer that's doing all of this work, then you don't do that work. Is that correct?
Well, there's going to be some coordination with the city regardless.
Right.
But
this
not
is what-
like this.
But not like this. I expect this to be.
You're babysitting.
And there's a certain amount of coordination that should be covered. That's why you collect an inspection, a construction
fees.
fee and an
That's
inspection fee.
And that's why the BEDC pays those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes.
To cover city time, the appropriate fair share of city time to do that.
Correct.
So really quick, what has spurred let's go back to the trail project real quick, is when the city did receive the Campo grant, that's when the TxDOT pieces kicked in. So when we originally did the scope of work, that was not included. So we have now since gone back and added and knew that we were going to have to add those components. So I think once we sit down with Bowman with the new scope of work, with the added components, that may fulfill some of what Trey is concerned with. The other side of that, literally, the other side of the trail project, coordinating with the Main Street project, is also another piece that originally was not part of that. And so the coordination has added 2 new components since the original project was brought to the board. So that kind of talks a little bit towards what Trey's trying to make sure is covered all the way across the board for everybody. The other piece is in the industrial park. That project also has changed significantly because originally we were doing a very small drainage pond on the lower portion of that property. That has now expanded across 2 full lots and encompasses a very significant part of the drainage in the industrial park on that northwest side. With that, we are also trying to work with the city on connecting some drainage potentials on MLK, where it currently has some challenges, and making sure that we encompass all of that as well. And yes, adding streetlights and other components, so we're making sure we've got everything on the docket. And Trey and Jerry both have sat at the table to make sure all those things are happening, and then making sure that we're not flooding neighbors downstream and that sort of thing. So, I think now that all of that has happened, and yes, they have submitted a lot of time to that, but now that we understand where we're at with the drainage changes that are going on and the requirements from the city changes that are going on, I think we're getting there. And I think once those plans are in place and everybody understands what exactly is on those plans, I think we will have a better understanding of what that looks like.
In my mind, I'm looking for, because I'm an Excel sheet. Don't you want to see an Excel sheet, Ron? That says, I want it on this project. This is what Bowman's doing and what they're getting paid to do. This is what the city's doing and what they're getting paid to do, so that Trey's not So we're not giving him more than what he can do, but we're paying him fairly for what, yeah.
Sure.
So, to go back to the grant for just 1 minute, these were not included. They were not line items included in the grant application. However, are these costs that could be paid through the grant funds?
I don't think so. I'd have to go back and look at the overall process, but I don't think so.
My
There's only
understanding
so
is
much
the
money.
grant doesn't care who picks up the tab, but they ain't picking up the tab for that part. So whether it's BEDC or the city or somebody else, they want their money going towards construction. Is that correct?
Right. The
Right.
grants didn't cover the entire estimated cost anyway. It covered the majority of it, but not the total amount.
No, and it didn't cover the 140 that we had to go back and do that. Okay, I think this is a great conversation for Bowman. I think this is a bad. I think this is a bad precedent to start, because you don't want that. You don't. Life can be better. You do not need to be going back and doing this on all projects. From the get-go, we need to get them right, and we need to minimize the cost and spend funds where we need to spend funds, and not waste funds where we don't need to waste funds.
So I don't disagree. We just want to be a good partner and help out where we could.
All right. Questions? Any more?
So that action item, Fallon, you'll make sure that we get something, because somebody's going to have a conversation with Bowman, kind of bring some coordination, and I guess you might end up involved in part of that conversation as well, right? Comparing scopes of contracts or something?
I think the best plan legally would be Bowman to come in, present to you, talk to you, and then I would then have a conversation with them afterwards legally about what the issues are, if any.
Okay, when would we be doing that sort of thing? I mean, time is of the essence. Are we doing this in a public forum? Are we doing this in the office around a table with spreadsheets laid out about different line items?
I think probably because we can do this probably on a more immediate basis, is maybe Trey and myself and whomever else would like to sit at the table, bring them to the office and everybody sit down and we go, okay, this is what we're looking at as an additional cost from the city. Are you guys already covering all of that in your scope of work, and getting those line items detailed out so we can provide that back to you all, as well as having them maybe come and do a presentation, but at least you'll have data to work with before that board meeting.
And you could provide the contract ahead of time. Ron, I wonder if you would be available to come and sit in on that meeting.
I can definitely do that. We get the information that we need together. We sit down with the staff and we go over just a scope of work clarification meeting, basically, is what it is.
And then bring it to the board at their decision.
And I can be available for that meeting as well if you'd like for me to be there.
That'd be great. Just to get it set up and send me out an email, time, place.
Can do that.
And again, I was unaware of the new scope when we prepared this because we were working on budget, so it may be that this is just goes with. Yeah.
I'd rather be aware of it and make sure we've only counted it once than a year, 9 months from now, you're like, hey, by the way.
That's right.
Here's your bill.
That's right.
And then would we amend the resolution and have an amendment for 1 project, 2 projects, 5 projects, or what? Do like an amendment to the resolution, or would these be handled completely separate because the resolution really only covers administrative and shared services, so we'd have a different one for project coordination, or what do you recommend, or do you have an opinion about?
I would recommend we cross that bridge when we get to it.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I think we work better with more, not less. Okay.
But for back to Angela, and with respect to the resolution, the 7,500 and 18,000 is fairly consistent with what we've been doing and are all services that this board still wants the city to provide this board. Is that correct?
Well, I would say with us deciding whether or not we're going to have the city do the audit or we're going to do the audit, and I think that has to do with the time frame that is required and if we can go ahead and get that. Because, I mean, for the last 2 years, I think we've talked about doing our own audit. We just haven't gotten around to it, and with the changing of EDs.
Yes, ma'am, but I think those numbers don't.
They're not in
no,
the
they're
audit.
not. Yeah.
No.
It's excluded.
But it's up here in this other one. Okay, so that's a separate amount that they've charged.
Angela, right? It's
line item.
18. It's 7 plus the cost of the audit. So that 18 and 75. I said 7. It's 7,500, I think.
That is my understanding as well.
Oh, okay.
But
Then we
to
don't
give
need to worry about it.
Some historical background, I was just pulling some numbers from years past. In 2017, we paid $37,972. That was the year that we had to itemize everything. And the city actually billed us for everything they did, and that included mowing, if I recall correctly. 15-16, it was $50,000. In 14,
for this
yes, ma'am,
shared and
because that's
administrative
what the finance department told us to put in, and therefore we did that. And it was Sean Kirkpatrick that came along and said, okay, you're going to have to justify that cost, and then we're going to get it in writing.
Okay.
So now we're
and
down to
I appreciate the
18,000.
history, but I'm trying to. Last year, didn't we pay $18,000 and $7,500
Yes, ma'am.
for this contract?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I was just trying to put it in a little bit of context as to how far we've come with getting it papered, and now we've got a contract.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Trey.
So from a workshop standpoint, we're talking about 18, 7,500, and an audit stands alone to the chair's point of we may or may not do our own, and if we do part of the city charges us for the part that covered us. And that would be separate, and that would follow the resolution and the contract that we adopted. Correct?
Not the new resolution as it has been proposed for $78,000. There's a new one in there that has $78,000. That's not the one
I got you.
That's
Because
correct.
it has another section for the project services, which is why you came to talk about that. Now I'm following you. Okay. I was looking at the old one.
Yeah, there's the old and the new. All right. What else do we want to ask Trey while he's here? Trey, do you have any questions of us?
No, ma'am.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate your patience.
Sure. Thank you.
We'll get back to you. All right. With that, I'd love to entertain a motion to adjourn. Typically, I just adjourn, but I'm feeling so formal this evening.
Wait. I have a comment. I'm sorry. Y'all are going to just hate me.
Oh, wait a minute. There are some other items in here in this budget.
The annual budget on the operations.
I'm getting there.
Yes. Where's mine? Because I actually have questions,
I don't know. I'm looking
so
at the
sorry.
double-sided. So, no, because mine's double-sided and hers isn't. So it must be around 18.
4. No. Sales tax revenue.
I'm on annual budget operations.
10 is the memo. No, operations is there. Yes.
Okay, on the 921 5345, C601 700 5345 building repairs and maintenance. We have 10,000 for 2019-2020, and it said that we were putting that in there for the 921 building, and the building won't even be finished until June.
That's correct. Now, at least, okay, we think we're going to finish this year out at 3,500. That includes maintenance, repairs, and cleaning on our current office as well.
But wasn't that in the 3,500?
Yes, ma'am. Well, that 3,500 is where we think we're going to end up this year. What we typically budget is 4,333. And then after meeting with Sam, he suggested $10,000,
Okay.
which is probably too much.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Yes.
Even if it was 4,300, because it will only be, if it's completed on time, there's only one
quarter.
One quarter.
Correct.
And if we have a tenant lease, we'll have zero responsibility for maintenance or cleaning.
In theory, correct.
So I feel like that is overstated. And then forecasting, if we do end up with a 10-year tenant, I think that number is overstated as well.
Okay.
So that was just one that jumped out at me because I was like, wow, I understand the 35 to 43, but the difference between 35 and 10,000, 3,500 and 10,000 in the notes, it says it was all attributed to 921 and for one quarter. If we have a brand new building and it needs $7,000 worth of maintenance in the first quarter, we have a huge problem.
Your tenant will be paying for that too.
That's what I'm saying. And I assume that with this, because the lease is not executed, we're budgeting knowing we would have to pay something. I just think $7,000 for a 9,000 square foot building in the first quarter is high.
What would be a good number, like split in the middle somewhere? You
I'd say
think?
5 or 65 at the most.
Okay. And did you have any other questions? No, you've moved on. Okay.
Well, no, I'm looking at professional services. I'm just asking, if we were doing professional service, is that where the buoy, where our services with the buoy would fall into? Page 16. This is where we have our legal and our engineering and professional services. It's 5505, just professional services.
It's 16 at the top and 22 at the bottom. It depends on which page number
I'm
you're
sorry,
looking
you're
at.
absolutely right.
I will say we don't expect to spend everything this year that was budgeted after the transfers. So part of that that we put in the budget for this upcoming fiscal year was some things that we don't expect to be paid for out of this budget year. There was a huge transfer done into that line item. That's why I put that on there. 5505. We started the year at 99.5, and we are now at 293,191. We just don't think we're going to be able to spend that much by the end of the year.
To answer your question, Chair, the buoy's contract would be included in that.
Yes.
So the first transfer in for 99.5, what was that for?
We believe that was Mr. Camberlander approving of the Ramey contract. He didn't know about buoy, so it would have been Ramey, and it would have been the website and strategic planning.
So it's the consulting marketing side of it?
Correct.
Okay. Where would I thought this was where the construction project manager that we talked about for 921, where they were budgeted.
That is where I budgeted that. And at the time I did that, I wasn't sure how much we were looking at. So
that's what I thought.
That's what you remember it. Yeah. We really put a conservative number there so that we would rather overshoot than undershoot. We can definitely adjust that now that we know what number that is.
On the contractual services, it just drops off in a 1920 budget. What's that for? What's dropping off exactly?
Okay, originally contractual services was where we took our portion of the parking lot. We called it the Kershaw parking lot. Remember? Okay, that was our portion of the three-part agreement. Last year, the board didn't have any interest in continuing that, but that is where Shane Sorensen was paid from. So we ended up with a deficit that we had to transfer money into in order to cover that. So there should be no more money coming out of that line item from here on out.
Okay, so I had a different kind of question. Because 5505, if that includes like a buoy contract, then why isn't it under contract services?
That's a good question. That's an accounting question, not a legal question. It could be either one, as far as I'm concerned.
Same thing with the strategic, but if those are contracts, then I don't know. I'm not an accountant, and I shouldn't even.
And
that just strikes me weird.
I would put the project manager under that as well, since it's related to a project and not professional services. To me, legally, is something that you use generally for the EDC, but something that's project specific would be under contractual services.
Makes sense.
I also agree with that. I debated on that with, I think when we had that meeting. But I think the thought process was that now that we're no longer doing the parking lot or know.
But it's not a parking lot line item, it's
No,
contractual
that was-
services. So if it's a contract, it should
You're-
be,
you're
as long
correct.
as the accountants are okay.
Exactly, but my recollection is that they put that together strictly for the parking lot. So I think the thinking was, let's get rid of it now that we're no longer using it. But I don't see why we can't go ahead and flip it and use it for these other contracts. I happen to agree with our attorney here. It makes sense to me to have a contract put under a contractual services line item.
And just so you know, legally, on legal services, we are now, because of my meeting with staff last month, I didn't know this was being separate. We're separating our bills in this category, so that way they don't have to do it anymore. It'll already be separated for staff.
Okay.
Are you charging us to do that?
No, ma'am. That's a third line item?
Thank you.
That's under legal administration.
I couldn't resist, Cameron.
We're
You
requesting an
opened
extra
it.
$1,500 for that? No,
There you
I'm just
go.
kidding.
Request denied.
So, what, with Sam agreeing and Tracy Waldron agreeing, because there could be other financial things that we don't know about, I hear kind of a workshop discussion that says contractual services should be contracts. If you can find a contract, it should be under that line item. If it's a professional service, that to me is like expanding staff or that kind of thing.
I think professional service, I think a good way to differentiate this is if it's a project-specific or a task-specific contract, it's under contractual services.
Gotcha.
If it's something generally for the EDC, like PR services, legal services, that can be used for any project, that can be used for any task, then that would be professional services.
Yeah. Just for the sake of argument, what about the strategic plan?
Professional services.
Okay.
But I do appreciate that you could talk yourself out of either one of them, right? You know what I mean? Like you could build a case, it'd be a great debate question, because you could be like, well, but there's a contract. Well, but it's for everything. Well, it's, you know. So. Yeah, I do too. I agree, Ms. Crawford.
And contractual services indicate there's an end date, and professional services don't.
Well, I'm going to keep here.
What's the other budget question?
I think that was, I had a big pink marker. I don't know which ones of these are. Oh, maybe.
The board treasurer did have a few concerns that he wanted to make sure were addressed, and he realized that it was going to be too late to get on this one, but we will make these changes moving forward. Let me just make sure I've covered all of them. Okay, so the numbers provided for the rental income on 921 Main were based on an average of $22 a square foot that Sam had come up with, and we purposely were conservative with that because we do not know what the final build-out square footage is going to be, and we don't know exactly what the triple net's going to be either. So we came up with a number and then backed down on it. So the number that is in that line item, and you'll have to bear with me while I figure out what page that's on.
It's revenue.
Oh, I'll go backwards. And then I go doing that again. You're not going to be able to, that doesn't add up to anything because it was the best guess, is what I'm trying to say. And if y'all have any other opinions about it, I'd love to hear them. Because it actually came out for the 3 months ending next fiscal year to 49.5, if I'm not mistaken. So we put 40 in. That's just an example. And then the next year was 198,000, and we backed it off to, well, no, I can't find it. Because I'm 161.5. Thank you.
I think that's, I'm fine. It's
Okay.
the best number that we have for now when the building's built and the lease is signed, because the other part of this is if for some reason the lease is not signed, it's still going to be whatever the building, you know, we'll do a budget amendment if it's a significantly different number, and we'll know better once it's signed. Does that make sense? Is that what we're thinking?
Yes.
Okay, I've also been asked to put a note somewhere in the budget that we do still have a few, some funds left over from a 2013 bond that we are expending first on the MLK technology project, and I checked today with Tracy Waldron. That amount is $327,760. That does not show up in the budget anywhere. She said she can't make it show up in the budget anywhere, but I can definitely footnote it somewhere because those funds will be expended first.
Are there, what are the restrictions on those funds? What can those funds be spent on?
They can be spent on infrastructure in the industrial park and or the Main Street Improvement Project, because that was the 2013 bond.
But they have to be construction?
Infrastructure related.
Project management of the construction?
I believe it's infrastructure only. I cannot pronounce that word. When we tried to take the fiber out of that line item, we were told we cannot do that, which is why, and that brings me to another point, fiber is going to be renamed so it's no longer confusing, because right now we have two MLK line items and one of those is the fiber portion. And because finance said that's not considered infrastructure by their definitions.
Well, I would appreciate a agenda item for when we come back to vote on the budget, that we clearly understand what those funds can be spent on.
Okay.
Yeah, that exactly. I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, if you can get me a copy of that, I can look through it as well.
That was a joint a bond with the city, so
Doesn't matter. It doesn't change what it can
you're
be spent
correct.
on.
But I do have a copy of the public hearing, if that will help you. Okay.
No,
I need
the bond.
the bond, yeah, the bond documents, whatever the stipulations that were attached to the bond are. What?
We'll have to get with Tracy Waldron for
Correct.
those. Okay.
So let's make that part of our spreadsheet workshop when we get together.
Yeah.
Will do.
And that was 2013 bond?
Yes, ma'am.
And how much money's left in them?
For our portion, $327,760. And then the
I love Sam Kier. Am I allowed to say that publicly? He rocks as
Awesome.
a board treasurer.
The rest of those funds are still awaiting the Main Street project to get kicked off, which I understand will be happening early next year.
So in all fairness, if the entire amount has been pegged for Main Street construction, then it's gone. But if it hasn't been, and it can be, we just want to know for sure where it's going.
Right, and since
Yes.
that trail has part of the Main Street portion in it, as long as it's allocated toward that portion, then we can reallocate others to.
I have a feeling
perhaps.
it's been
That's an excellent
dedicated
question.
towards construction myself. I have a feeling.
We didn't have the sales tax rebate in time for this particular packet, but I do have it now. Quick note for those of you who have not heard this before. Buc-ee's will be finishing up this next year. Let me find this just a second. Oh, I don't think I have one because it's not in there. Is it? Yeah, it's not in there. What am I thinking?
You had one the other day when I was in the office.
Yes, and I think that's probably the one we were looking at.
Nice colored chart with different colors.
Correct. And Mayor, you can probably speak to this a little better than I can. Burleson Crossing's not going to finish out exactly when they thought it was. There have been some increases in that.
I think that's not all completely resolved.
Exactly why we didn't get and even what I did get today is not finalized, so I didn't feel like I needed to print off enough copies for everybody. We're still working on it. We hope to have that finalized for the next budget meeting. But we are on track to pay off Buc-ee's next fiscal year, a couple years early.
And also, although it's not part of the budget, I do still want it footnoted somewhere that the funds that we have to reserve back, just noted, I don't want them lost somewhere. The $150,000 that on the bond that we had to reserve.
I did forget to follow up on that. I apologize. I will write that down right now.
Yeah, that's right.
I just don't want 10 years from now someone else say, well, there's that 150 you put in reserves, because it's not mentioned anywhere in the budget.
Right, and that's
just footnote it somewhere.
That's the money we had to put down to get the 2018 bond, correct?
Yes,
Is that
we
what
just
you're alluding
had to put it in reserves.
Right.
Out of sight, out of mind. When it goes
I
out
understand.
of sight, it goes out of sight.
Exactly.
All right, I think I have all my pink highlighted things. I'm trying to...
Angela, thank you for your work and for your memory.
It's not as good as it used to be, but every now and again. Thank you, Pat.
Just because we're not quite ready to go, I've got one more thing. So on page 14, where your memos are, it's business development. Business development under marketing and advertising. So it's 13, page 13 at the top. There's $8,000. So my question is, business development hosts and participates in events to promote economic development within the Bastrop market. Is there any overlap there with what we're line iteming Main Street? How do you distinguish what you're giving Main Street for that item and what we're giving towards something else?
The business development line item is typically where we take, and Jean can probably speak to this a little better than I can because she's the one that usually markets people when they come to town. If you take them out to lunch or to dinner or anything else in the development of those kinds of relationships, that's where that comes from. Okay. So it's hard to tell. I mean, we're not going to hit where we were at, where we thought we were going to be. We're only about halfway there, but we can't foresee what next year's going to bring because we have been entertaining a lot more prospects right now.
It helps me because you've kind of defined what it is outside of what I was thinking it might be.
Well, so Chair, you're saying that if it's things like imagine the possibilities, and it may have been in the past because we didn't have line items for how the 50 was being spent, but we just need to be, if we've given money to Main Street to cover that, then we shouldn't be covering it here as well.
Basically a double dip.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that, but no, that's not what typically comes out of there.
Okay, that's good. Thank you for the
If
clarification.
Jean meets with a prospect or anybody else, then that's where that comes from.
No.
And it's maps and like color maps and things that we might send them specific to.
Yes, and if we need to pay a fee on something small in order to get a deal closed, it might possibly come out of there.
Okay, thank you. Very helpful. Learned a lot tonight. Any other questions? Anybody want to stay any longer?
Motion to adjourn.
All those opposed? We're done.